Don't look down. Keep your eyes on the road. Hold on tight. Never give up. And you might survive the world's most extreme. These are the craziest, deadliest, most extreme destinations on Earth. This time, we see wild crosswinds, even wilder takeoffs, wet and wicked landings, and flyovers that'll blow you away. As we count down the world's most extreme airports. Up first, we're on a tropical island for the world's closest airport. There are some extreme airports in the sun-kissed Caribbean. Tiny Saba Airport has the shortest commercial landing strip in the world. St. Bart's forces planes to skim over a street before coming to a stop. Or not.
Dude, that guy's got to stop. Whoa!
But one island runway reigns supreme. The Princess Juliana Airport on the island of St. Martin. You can't get closer than this. Planes descend just 40 feet above people's heads. Landings are extreme. Here on St. Martin's Maho Beach, sunbathing comes with a free air show.
Imagine you're laying on the beach on a towel just sunbathing, and suddenly a 747 careens overhead so close that you feel like you could touch it.
On St. Martin, there's so little flat land that none of it can be wasted on a wide airport perimeter. Pilots must cope with a runway that starts just 60 feet off the beach.
You've got this beautiful azure sea, you've got this wonderful island, all the lushness, and you've got to concentrate on putting her down on this postage stamp of a runway, or at least that's what it looks like when you're making your initial approach.
The landings are shockingly close. But takeoff is where things get serious. The jet engines power up just a couple of hundred feet from the airport barrier. The jet wash blasts the beach at 50 miles an hour. The wind speed of a tropical storm. Unsuspecting vacationers are blown away by the force.
You're talking about a 747 where every engine is producing 50,000 pounds of thrust.
But some tourists actually enjoy the blast.
We're gonna get our asses kicked here!
Princess Juliana Airport has a unique extreme sport.
Here we go!
Fence surfing. Some hang 5, others wipe out. But no one forgets the Princess Juliana Airport, whether you're in the plane or 40 feet beneath it. From the closest to the remotest, we're going to the airport at the bottom of the world. Introducing the Sea Ice Runway, the airport for the South Pole.
It's so cold, it's so remote, it's almost like being on another planet.
This runway is built from scratch every year.
It's a hard, just cruel environment.
77 degrees south, only 800 miles from the pole. It's an airport built on a frozen sea.
When the door opens up, you walk outside and you see this is not New York, this is not LA, this is, Antarctica. There's these giant volcanoes and mountains around, ice everywhere. It's a pretty crazy experience.
John Cassano is a scientist whose work depends on studying the ice caps.
The runway is completely essential to what we do.
He's one of 1,200 people who live and work at the McMurdo Scientific Station.
This is the main Antarctic base for the United States.
For half the year, food and equipment are brought in by boat. Until the seasons change. Every winter, the sea freezes over. The base is then 65 miles from open water. The only way to reach McMurdo is by air, so a runway must be built. David Bresnahan has kept the airport open for the last 30 years.
Well, the unique thing about the runway is it's built on about 8 feet of natural sea ice.
Every year, after a location survey, David and his team begin work on the newly frozen sea ice. They clear the snow and carve out a 10,000-foot landing strip strong enough to withstand the impact of a fully loaded plane. They've got to get it right, because the planes out here are really heavy. The ice has to support a huge, fully loaded C-17 weighing 450,000 pounds, as much as the Statue of Liberty.
I'm sitting on the plane and thinking about it. I go, who would land a plane on sea ice? It's crazy.
The runway rests on 8 feet of ice. Below it is a half mile of bitterly cold water. Crack the ice, fall in, and you could be dead in seconds. Scientists at the South Pole rely on the planes to bring them supplies, but the weather can change in an instant. If a blizzard hits, it's a whiteout.
You can't see where the horizon is, and you can't tell what's up or down because you don't know where you are. You just feel like you're floating in space.
When the weather gets severe, it's too dangerous for planes to even attempt to land. Instead, they must fly 2,000 miles back to where they came from.
That's called the boomerang. The next closest runway to McMurdo is where you took off from, in New Zealand.
The Sea Ice Runway, our most remote airport. From sliding ice to crunching gravel, we're in Nepal for the world's roughest landing. Believe it or not, this is a commercial airport. Taucha in Mugu, Nepal. Totally isolated. The runway is a narrow ledge carved into the mountainside. It's made of gravel. The control tower is made of wood, but this is call sign TAL, Taucha Airport.
Usually when you land, you feel a sense of safety, a sense of relief. But at this airport, you are literally plopping down on the side of a cliff.
The village of Taucha sits at 8,900 feet in the wild western region of Nepal. It's a 70-mile journey by rutted road to the nearest major town. On foot, it's a 5-day trek. So the airport is vitally important. But the pilots who fly here are under no illusions about Taucha's condition.
Once I started coming in here, I was kind of scared myself. Inexperienced pilots are not allowed to come to this airport.
– 8 a.m. Bimdata Pant is the air traffic controller at Taucha.
Good morning, sir.
He must keep the airport running for the 2 daily flights. But today, there's an emergency. Villagers have brought a local man to the airport on a stretcher. He's badly injured and needs medical help. It took them 2 hours to carry him to the airport. The only hope is to fly him out. But that means a rescue plane must make a nail-biting landing onto the raw, rugged Taucha airstrip. At the rugged Taucha Airport in western Nepal, an injured man needs an emergency airborne evacuation. Air traffic controller Bim makes an urgent call to the airline. A rescue plane takes off 2 hours away. Meanwhile, at Taucha, all the family can do is wait. Finally, after what seems an eternity, the rescue plane comes into view. Its pilot must land on what looks like a narrow scar cut into the mountainside. The only navigational aids are 4 red flags and this simple white arrow. The pilot must drop his plane down on the short quarter-mile gravel runway. And it's a tough surface to land on.
The village road down there intersects with the runway, so there are a lot of potholes and rocks. It is a difficult airport to land at.
The main hazard while landing at Taucha Airport, it's the airport itself. It is very, very challenging.
In 2011, this single-engine aircraft landed and dug into the gravel runway. The landing gear was smashed to pieces. Wreckage near the runway is a grim reminder of what can go wrong at Taucha. If this rescue plane doesn't land safely, the fate of an injured man will be in doubt. Even after the plane touches down, the pilot must still battle this rough runway.
There's a big cliff over there on the other side of the runway. So if the aircraft is not being able to stop, it'll go over the cliff. That's a disaster.
The plane slows to a stop, still running. Time is of the essence. The injured man is loaded aboard the plane, and now he has a chance of survival. Within 20 minutes, the plane is back in the air. Within 3 hours, the injured man will be at the hospital getting treatment. A life saved because of a rocky airstrip chiseled out of the side of a mountain. Taucha Airport. Back in the States, we're in Alaska for the wettest airport. This is a lifeline for the last frontier state.
Alaska was in many respects built on aviation.
It's an airport like no other.
You really have no way of knowing what the surface conditions are going to be.
This is Lake Hood, an airport so extreme, its runway is made of water. It's the world's busiest seaplane base, 67,000 air ops a year, 180 landings every day, and not one of them is easy.
Essentially, when you're landing on water, you are not landing in controlled conditions. You are landing in a wild place.
When there's no runway, water can be your landing strip. But it can lead to some dangerous landings.
I would not even be able to count the number of accidents and incidents on Lake Hood over time because this is Alaska bush flying.
Lake Hood in the summer of 2009. A de Havilland Beaver carrying a family of 4 and 2 dogs takes off. Moments later, fortunately, no one is injured. The NTSB investigation blames pilot error. Despite the potential dangers of float plane operation, Lake Hood must stay open. It's the only option for those living in Alaska's remote regions. With few roads or hard surface airstrips, there's often no choice but to take off and land on water.
80% of the communities in Alaska have no road access. So in other words, they are linked to the outside world by air.
But in winter, there's not even open water. The airport runway, the lake, begins to freeze. All float plane traffic is grounded. The key lifeline to the interior is severed until someone lands on the ice. Lake Hood, Alaska. The seaplane base's water runway is frozen over. No one can take off or land. Today, pilot Michael Lachlan is out to test the ice on the lake. First, he drills to check its thickness.
Every now and then somebody tries to get out on the ice before it's ready. They fall through the ice. It's a major deal.
But drilling is one thing. Landing a plane on the ice is another. Coming down in a 3,000-pound seaplane could break the ice, putting the plane and pilot in danger.
Ice in particular has a lot more issues than landing on the water. You really have no way of knowing what the surface conditions are going to be, so it takes a lot of guesswork on the pilot.
There are no landing marks on the frozen lake. It all comes down to Michael's judgment and skill.
You're being really careful to look ahead, make sure there's no shallow ice or water coming through.
This is not McMurdo, where the ice is 8 feet thick.
If the ice is too thin, you'd fall through the ice.
Michael's plane lands safely, confirming the ice is set. Alaska has a key lifeline restored. Lake Hood is now open for winter business. From the waters of Alaska to the sands of Arabia, the world's fastest airport is in Abu Dhabi. For 363 days of the year, this is not an airport. But for one weekend, something amazing happens. The Red Bull Air Race comes to town.
It's an amazing buzz. It's an incredible challenge.
This is no old-style air show. This is the fastest motorsport on Earth, with planes reaching speeds up to 230 miles per hour.
It's a roller coaster on steroids.
Abu Dhabi hosts the opening round of the air race season here at Mina Zayed Port. For most of the year, this is a cargo port handling 900,000 tons annually. But over 48 hours, 80 people work to turn it into a championship airport.
With a whole ton of people and a lot of hard work, magically appears a race airport.
12 pilots and their teams work out of the high-tech pit lane, tuning their engines and mentally preparing for the race. American Michael Goulian has been competing here for 6 years.
The race airport here for the Red Bull Air Race is different than other airports because we create a coliseum for aviation in a week.
A one-week effort to showcase planes and pilots that can do this. At Abu Dhabi's leg of the World Air Race Championship, pilots must twist and turn their planes through 15 gates. To do this, they endure up to 12 Gs, a force so great it would make most people pass out.
We bump the edge in many different ways. Our human ability to withstand the G, and then also what we can get out of our airplane.
There's not a Boeing or Airbus in sight, and that's because they build the whole airport from scratch, just to race. Brace for turbulence on the Atlantic island of Madeira. This is our gustiest airport. Around the world, there are some wildly windy airports.
One of the toughest things for any pilot is a crosswind landing.
Winds can literally blow planes off the runway.
It's a horrible, gut-wrenching feeling.
A pilot must fight the elements to set a plane down safely.
Runways appear to be fairly predictable, but the fact is the wind determines an awful lot.
When you land in a crosswind, it sort of takes you out of the illusion that you actually have control over the plane.
But nowhere is quite like here. Funchal Airport. It's perched on the edge of the island of Madeira, 350 miles off the coast of Africa. Vicious sea winds regularly whip across the runway at speeds of 40 miles per hour. That's strong enough to flip over an 18-wheeler. Some gusts push the speeds even higher. Winds like this make nearly every landing a roller coaster ride. And up to 10 a month fail to land at all. Veteran pilots know why.
People who make fatal mistakes on landings usually approach with the intent and purpose in your mind that you're going to get that airplane on the ground regardless.
At Funchal, pilots have only moments to decide. Force the landing and risk the lives of their passengers, or pull up and go around.
You can take an airplane almost down to touchdown and still go around successfully, as long as you've got flying speed.
For passengers, an aborted landing is a frightening experience.
Here you're coming in, everything seems to be going normally, and all of a sudden you feel those throttles get kicked on, you're pushed back in your seat. You know something didn't go right.
At Madeira, it happens time after time after time.
It's a terrifying feeling.
Funchal, an airport so windy, you may never land there. Swooping in is Hong Kong, home to two of the craziest airports on Earth. It's the fourth most crowded territory in the world. Hong Kong's airports have to fight with skyscrapers for every square inch of runway. The result? The legendary Taucha Airport. Here, landings were so frightening, passengers called it the Taucha heart attack.
That was an airport that would scare you to death.
This was the most extreme airport to fly into.
(1996). Taucha is the third busiest airport in the world and one of the most dangerous. 440 planes fly in or out of here each day. Over 30 million passengers travel through the airport every year. That's more than twice the number that pass through Washington's Dulles Airport. Captain Mike Lowes has to fly into Kai Tak 15 times a month.
This was the most challenging approach in the world.
Surrounding mountains prevent any direct flight path to the runway. Landing aircraft must make a 47-degree turn in the midst of the city's skyscrapers.
For an airline pilot, it was an approach that was unique.
Arriving passengers are treated to a heart-pounding, stomach-churning descent, and pilots have to brace themselves for the dreaded Hong Kong turn. In 1996, Hong Kong's Kai Tak Airport forces pilots to make a dramatic approach to the runway. Captain Mike Lowes' first job is to line up with an orange checkerboard target on the mountainside.
We would then have to see the checkerboard, commit to landing, and then start the turn onto the runway.
The maneuver is so challenging, it's too dangerous for the guidance computer. Get it wrong, and you'll smash into the mountains.
That's when the skills came in, because you turned all the guidance system off.
Caution, caution, manual.
And as you turned the corner, you had to keep that runway in sight.
The sharp right turn has to be completed in just 20 seconds.
On completion of the turn, you'd be somewhere just between the gap in those two buildings when you were finally lined up with the runways. And you were probably only about 200 feet above the ground. So to make a landing onto runway 13 in Kai Tak,
100.
You had to be on top of your game.
40, 30,
15,
20, retard, 5.
Only the most experienced pilots were allowed to land at the deadly Kai Tak Airport.
You couldn't just come in here willy-nilly. You had to have done it in the simulator. You had to be checked out before you're allowed to even make the approach.
But as Hong Kong grows, Kai Tak proves too great a challenge. The government closes it and proposes a new airport site.
Hong Kong is incredibly dense and incredibly developed. So when you want to build an airport, the only place you can is on the water.
Lack of space is an extreme problem. Building a new airport is the extreme solution. In 1992, 2 small islands are flattened. 12 billion cubic feet of dirt and rock is moved. 3,000 acres of new land is created. A new airport is born. This is Chep Lak Kok, one of the world's busiest airports. Despite its dangers, the closed Kai Tak Airport has earned a unique status among pilots like Captain Mike Lowes.
Great airport, a wonderful airport, challenging airport. It was the pilot's airport.
From crowded Hong Kong, we're going to Scotland and the world's wildest, Barra Airport. Set on a tiny island 60 miles off the Scottish coast. An airport that disappears with every tide.
This airport is assembled and taken apart every single day.
This landing strip is at the mercy of the elements.
We depend on Mother Nature to open the runways for us.
In Hong Kong, they built a runway on a man-made island. But at Barra, you land on a natural sandy beach.
Any landing you walk away from is a good landing.
9 a.m. Because of a storm, the tiny island of Barra has been cut off from the outside world for 24 hours. The rough seas have canceled the ferry from the mainland. The airport is the only remaining link. Joe Gillies' job is to keep Barra Airport open, come hell or high water. His first task is to turn a wide, flat strip of sand into a runway.
We've got the beach to inspect. All this has to be done before the plane arrives.
As soon as the tide is out, Joe is on the beach.
Well, I've seen debris like wood, you get seabird, ropes from fishing boats, all kinds of things like the odd carcass of a seal.
Clearing debris from the sandy runway is critical.
It could easily puncture one of the wheels and cause an accident.
9:30 a.m. With the runway cleared, Joe prepares for the first scheduled flight of the day. The only scheduled flight of the day.
Just now we're only getting one aircraft a day.
Joe's next job is to monitor the weather. The storm has already closed the seaport, and it could easily shut the airstrip too.
Our wind is gusting 40 knots just now, but the weather's actually going to get worse.
For now, the airport stays open, but it may not remain open for long.
The visibility is quite poor. When it comes below this hill, it's not good for the aircraft.
The daily flight to Barra took off from the mainland an hour ago and must land before the weather worsens. With no time to lose, Joe takes up yet another new position, fireman. He and his colleagues will be ready at a moment's notice should there be an emergency.
We've got 2 fire engines there ready to respond to an incident straight away. You have to be fast, because the fuels they use, they burn fast.
10 a.m. Joe's in place, the beach is ready, and the plane makes its final approach. It's a perfect landing. But that is only half the job. The tide is turning and will soon flood the runway. Joe has to race to get the plane turned around and the passengers aboard.
The tide sometimes does its own thing. On certain days, the tide comes in a lot faster than other days.
Joe now swings into his 4th role as baggage handler.
20 minutes is the time limit for the aircraft. We have to do it faster because the tide's coming in.
All aboard, clear for takeoff. And soon the plane is back in the air. Now, Joe can relax. A hard day's work, well done. Barra is back in touch with the outside world. And thanks to Joe, the world's wildest airport remains open.
I love my job, just keeps us busy.
Now we're in the heart of the Himalayas for the world's most mountainous. Lukla, the gateway to the highest mountain on Earth, Everest. A runway 9,000 feet in the sky. It's short, steep, and deadly.
Like a roller coaster, you know?
This airport with altitude will put even the most hardened pilots to the test.
If you do it wrong, it's going to be hard landing.
With 4 crashes in the last 5 years, it's a perilous place to land.
The other side of the runway is just a wall, a mountain.
Most mountaineers looking to climb up Everest must first survive coming down at Lukla Airport. It's a harrowing, white-knuckle ride.
The landing strip comes out of nowhere.
Oh my God, were you gonna really land there?
I close my eyes.
And then you're banking steeply.
And you're just like, holding your breath.
And then we were here.
I was just like, thank God I'm alive.
It's 10 a.m.
Good morning,
12,000 feet in the air, Captain Rajesh Shrestha is flying a plane load of climbers up to Lukla's sky-high landing strip.
I'm flying for 40 years, and I hold the post of the chief pilot in Barra Air.
One of today's passengers knows the challenges of Lukla better than most anyone, veteran pilot Bijay Lama.
I would say Lukla is probably one of the most exciting and exotic airfield that you can go and land there.
The first challenge Lukla poses to Captain Shrestha is its sheer height. The plane's engines struggle for power in the thin air.
We have to always play with the power till the touchdown.
Lukla is at 9,000 feet, sandwiched between some of the highest mountains on Earth. Staying airborne at this high altitude demands higher speeds. The plane must approach the runway at 86 miles an hour, 25% faster than it would at sea level. That means it lands fast. The next hurdle is traffic. At Lukla, helicopters and planes land and take off on the same runway. With over 50 flights a day arriving and departing, the risks keep climbing. Air traffic controller Kiran Kafle must be on top of his game. One mistake from him could end in tragedy.
Good morning, sir. 04 now, sir.
Shrestha is cleared for landing. But once he touches down, he still has the sloping runway to deal with. It's just 1,500 feet long, and Shrestha must be ready to slam on the brakes. Standing at the end of the short runway is a solid stone wall. In 2010, this aircraft failed to stop in time. Luckily, no one was seriously injured. Captain Shrestha knows the risks. He's landed at Lukla before. But as the runway comes into view, 16 lives rest in his skill and nerve. "12,000 feet high in the Himalayas, Captain Rajesh Shrestha makes his final approach to Lukla, the world's most mountainous airport. One of his passengers, veteran pilot Bijay Lama, knows this route well.
Approach is very, very critical here. As soon as we clear that hill, they start extending their landing gears, which you can hear just now.
Captain Shrestha makes contact with air traffic control at Lukla.
Lukla, morning.
Traveling at 86 miles per hour, he's coming in fast. But at such a high altitude, he has to.
This is a straight nose-in dive. It's like a roller coaster.
Touchdown. Now Captain Shrestha. This is the way in and out of the battle zone. Bagram Air Base.
There's a war going on directly below you as you fly in. That's got to be scary.
Bagram Airfield is located 25 miles northeast of Kabul, Afghanistan's capital. It's the U.S. military's largest base of operations in the country, and an airport fighting for its survival. Lieutenant Colonel Scott Hoffman is in charge of keeping the airplanes flying and the people on the ground safe.
We are under the threat of attack. We're doing combat operations 24/7.
Bagram has been attacked hundreds of times in the last decade. May 2010. An infrared camera captures the moment the base is assaulted. One Taliban fighter throws a grenade at coalition troops. A battle erupts. "30 insurgents are defeated."
We are in a combat zone. We're always under the threat of an attack. I think Bagram has got to be one of the most extreme airfields in the world.
Bagram is also one of the busiest military taxiways in the world. It services both military and civilian aircraft. To manage such a massive workload, the airbase runs all day and all night.
We're in the middle of a combat zone, and yet we push out over almost 1,000 aircraft every day, takeoff and landings. It's a challenge, but every single one of us here work off challenges, and we thrive off challenges.
Over 300,000 passengers, 200,000 tons of cargo, and more than 100,000 vehicles pass through Bagram every year. The flights never stop. The threat never goes away. Bagram is the world's most extreme.